Okay, this is the finale of the before dinner part. We're going to have we have a very special guest. I'm going to tell you about him briefly. Again, it's in the program, but his name is Steven Sidoroff. And after he speaks, we're going to take a 10-minute break after he speaks, and then when you come back, the buffet will be all set up, and we'll go for it. And one of the most exciting parts of SAIOE is the food. We have a great dinner coming up. So I hope you're all hungry. Steve Sidoroff actually spoke at a SAIOE several years ago. How long ago, Steve? About 6-7 years ago? A couple of times, and it was at the Peninsula Hotel. And a very interesting thing happened because there was something that Stephen actually impacted my mind. You know how in your lifetime you can think of 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 things that really impact you, that really affect your life, that change your life. Well, I was mentioning that to my daughter Kim, who's actually doing a show now that's part of her work that she's doing with an Eric Carle line of skincare. And I was talking to her, and I said to her, I was telling her who's coming, and I mentioned Steven Sidoroff, and she said, "Oh my God, he is?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Well," she said, "he impacted my life. He's one of those, he said something that impacted my life, and it's changed it forever." And I said, "Wow, that's interesting, Kim." I said, "Is that what you heard me say?" And she said, "No." "What do you mean, Papa?" And I said, "Tell me about it." And she actually said exactly what I would have said if I was talking to someone about it. So I never really spoke to too many other people, but that was quite amazing. But anyway, what impacted me was that Steve Sidoroff spoke at that time about unfinished business, and that basically how unfinished business can affect your life, your mental life, your physical life, every aspect of your life in a negative manner. And he talked about it, so I don't know how that's going to meld into love and how he's going to talk about it now, but I will tell you that when that was over, I couldn't get it off my mind. And there was a particular thing that happened to me, and I shared this with Steve about a week and a half ago, and that was that the glove compartment of my car was something that was a chronic upset in my life. And I would open up the glove compartment to get something important, and everything would fall out. And I would open up the glove compartment another time, and I would hold everything in, and I would fish around to try to find out what I needed. And every single time I did that, I said, "I've got to clean that glove compartment out." But I never did it. And at least a couple of years went by. It was like really that way. And one day I was looking for something that was really important, and I went in there and the stuff fell out and I couldn't find it, and I had to pull over, and I was really mad, and it just hit me. Wow, unfinished business. So I pulled over into a small parking lot, and I took a box out of my trunk, and I emptied out the box. It was empty, and I went in, and I took everything in the glove compartment and put it in the box, everything. And then I took a piece of cloth, and I swept out the glove compartment, and I looked at it. It was all clean. It made me feel really good. And then I took everything that was in that box, and I went out in the parking lot, and I dumped it out in the parking lot. And then I took my hands, and I spread it all out, and I actually went through it. And I took out all the garbage that I didn't need, which was most of what was in there. And then I took out all the things that I thought I needed, but I hadn't used in 2 or 3 years, and put them at one side. And then I took out what I actually really needed in the glove compartment. And it was really just a few things, registration, insurance, a few things like that, an extra pad, a pencil. And So I threw away all the garbage, and I put the stuff that I was going to save for the future, which, by the way, I could have thrown that out too because I never used it. But what happened was that after I finished doing that, it felt, I mean, I don't do drugs, but if cocaine gives you a lift, that's what I felt like. I felt so good. And I felt good for like 3 weeks after that. I mean, everything about me changed just because I completed something that I kept saying I wanted to do and didn't do it. And my daughter, Kim, had an experience that was different from that, but similar. And so I want to tell you that this guy, he's very well known. He does a lot of good stuff. You can read about him, but he is amazing and love him. And when I was talking to Steve, I was over at Larry Payne's 30-year celebration, and Steve was there. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, "How you doing? What are you doing?" And I talked to him about it, and I told him that the theme of SAIOE was secrets of love. And he said, "That's very interesting." And I'll let you have Steve, because you'll find out what's interesting about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is a gorgeous place. How'd you find it? It's really lovely. Yeah. And it's wonderful to talk about all of the different components of your program. And what I'd like to do today, actually, is talk about something that gets in our way and give you some tools about dealing with it. And how many of you have heard of Frank Zappa and Mothers of Invention, Well, there was one song of his that always stuck in my mind, and the title of the song is, "What is the ugliest part of your body?" And I'll attempt to do the first few lines of it. And it goes, "What is the ugliest part of your body? Some say it's your nose. Some say it's your toes, but I think it's your mind. I think it's your mind." And there are a whole bunch of things about our minds that are wonderful. And one thing that the mind tends to do is it tends to hold on. And the mind holds on very, very tightly. And it has a collaborator as well. So the mind doesn't only hold on by itself, but it colludes with the body. So that when the mind is holding, it has the body help by holding as well. And one of the things that we hold on to very tightly are feelings. Now, you know, one of the things you're learning today and you've learned is feelings are very important and very good, but when you have feelings that are not dealt with, when you have feelings that you're holding on to, it gets in your way and creates what I call unfinished business. And when the body colludes, because we can't only hold in the head, we literally have to create armoring in our body. And this interferes with the ability to sense. It interferes with openness. And so there was a very interesting study done many, many years ago, actually in the 1920s. And one of the things Bob said to me before I came up here was, okay, you're going to have the experience of talking to people when they're very hungry. And there was this wonderful experiment done by a group of psychologists in Germany in the 1920s called Gestalt psychologists. And what they did was they divided a group into two. In one group, they had sit down and they gave them a 5-course meal. The other group, they deprived of food for 5 hours. And then they showed both groups the identical abstract painting. And what they found was every single person in the group that was deprived of food for 5 hours saw something related to food Now, what do I look like right now? Something related to food in the painting. But the group that had just sat down and ate, not a single one of them saw anything related to food in that identical abstract painting. Now, you may have an experience that relates to this. I don't know, if you're in your car, you're listening to music, you get to your destination, and you turn off the car, you turn off the music, but it's in the middle of a song. Many of the times you'll notice you're continually trying to finish that song in your head. And this dates me, but many, many years ago when cigarette commercials were still on radio and TV, there was a Winston jingle that goes, "Winston tastes good like a cigarette should." And they repeated it over and over and over again, but the last time at the end of the commercial, they just did the first part. Winston tastes good like a... And people are walking around in their lives singing the Winston jingle and, I guess, buying Winston cigarettes when they get in front of a grocery store. So how does this relate to Secrets of Love? And the way it relates to it has to do with something that gets in our way of relationships and gets in our way of loving. And I can remember, I'll use a personal experience of mine, which is my relationship with my mother. And I remember, and this was at a period of time where I was first getting into this work of being a psychologist, and when I got together with my mother, one of the things that I noticed was there was a little reluctance to just really hold her, hug her when I saw her, and just really feel good. And in the work that I did with myself, I began to realize that what was getting in the way of me just being present with her and fully loving the experience was that I was sitting on some anger. I was sitting on some resentments that got in my way. And so what I found in my own life and what I found in my own work was that I had to work through those feelings that I was sitting on that I was really for many, many years unconscious about, and work those through. And when I did, I was able to be more present and more loving in that relationship. And there are many reasons why we have these feelings that we're sitting on, but we're not aware of. And I can take this example with my mother, is, well, I should love my mother, so it's not okay to be angry. So even though the anger was there, I was doing things to not notice, not pay attention to it, because it's not okay to be, it's being disloyal. There are all of these reasons why we deny some of our feelings. Can all of you relate to what I'm talking about? Okay. Now, in my private practice as a clinical psychologist, many times I have people who come to me to deal with issues, and a lot of times I get a lot of people who've been to 1, 2, 3 therapists before me, and they've worked on all of their feelings and their anger, and they'll be sitting with me and they say, well, I've gotten angry at my mother, or I've gotten angry at my husband or my wife, and they'll talk about all of the different work they've done in therapy expressing their anger. And for many years, this kind of baffled me. Well, if they've done all this work on the anger, what's going on here? Why is it still an issue? And there's something very important in the process of dealing with your unfinished business that determines whether you move through it, or, as with many of the people that have come to me, it just goes around and around and around. Okay, what's that difference? What do you think that difference might be? Acceptance. Forgiveness is a part of it, but yes, acceptance of what is. And so much of the time we have a lot of difficulty getting to that place of acceptance. And even when people think they've accepted, they'll be asking questions, for example, but why did he or she have to do that? As soon as you ask a question, you're wanting something to be different than it is. You're trying to understand something that may not be understandable based on your own way of thinking. You know, a parent, for example, that's alcoholic or that was abusive to you or mistreated you. There isn't any way to really understand that. But if we try and go to the understanding, it takes us away from getting to where we need to get to within ourselves. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to take you all through a process to help you move through some of unfinished business that you might have that may be getting in the way of your ability to love somebody. Now, it's interesting. If we're in a relationship, there are different ways that unfinished business can get in our way. We can have unfinished business with that person. We can be carrying some feelings with us that gets in the way of getting close. We can have unfinished business with somebody else in our life, say a mother or a father, that because we haven't finished that and we've sort of blocked off of our heart because we have been hurt. And a lot of times the hurt from what we didn't get or the hurt from what we did get in our childhood gets in the way of a current relationship. And sometimes it could be someone who's no longer alive, a parent who's no longer alive. The good news about dealing with unfinished business is that it doesn't require the other person. And this is another place that we sometimes get stuck. You know, well, you know, I got my anger out, but they didn't apologize. Or I got my anger out, but they really weren't listening to me. Okay. See, as soon as we need something from somebody else to finish our unfinished business, we're stuck. Because we can't control anybody but ourselves. Okay. The good news is that finishing unfinished business is about doing something with the feelings yourself, and it doesn't matter if the other person hears you, apologizes, or is even alive. Okay? So, I want to take you through a process, and what you can do is think of somebody in your life now that maybe you're struggling with. It could be someone who's no longer with you that you're struggling with, and I want to take you through a process, and I'll tell you what the steps in the process are. The first one is simply, and this has to do with sensing.
How many can we do at one time?
Let's start with one. I'm actually going to do quickly a second process that relates specifically to your relationship with yourself, and that's second. But the first one is with somebody else. So, and the steps are, number one, noticing that you have something going on with that other person. You just notice something inside. Step two is identifying what that is. Oh, it's sadness. Oh, it's hurt or anger, okay? The third is to recognize the connection, the cognitive part of it. Oh, it's with so-and-so, and I'm feeling hurt because they did this or didn't do that. Or it could be it's with so-and-so because of how they treated me. Okay, so that's the third part. The fourth part is expressing the feeling, allowing the feeling to move through your body. The fourth part is being able to address and express the feeling in some way. It can be, and we're certainly a little bit limited here, but it can be physically doing something to express the feeling, such as anger, or letting yourself simply feel the sadness and the hurt. But this step is about feeling and expressing. In your own lives, you can write a letter to this person. You don't even have to mail it, because it's simply about you getting the feeling out. You know, motion is part of the word emotion. Emotion activates the body. As long as you're sitting with that activation, you can't simply let it go. So it's not just a cognitive process. There's a part of it of actually experiencing and expressing the feelings. So that's the next part. The next part is acceptance. And a lot of people get stuck with acceptance because, well, damn it, they were wrong. Okay, well, this is about feeling good and feeling present in your life, not being right. It's not about right or wrong. And that's how a lot of times we get stuck here. Another way we get stuck is that to fully feel the feelings can be painful. And so a lot of times we find ways of not going there because we're afraid of the pain. If you allow yourself to be with the feeling, it actually turns out to be much less painful than we imagine it's going to be. In fact, and Asher, you made a reference to this before, and it's actually feeling the feelings and being opening to the feelings, no matter what they are, can actually feel good. It certainly helps you feel alive. So there's acceptance, and then the last step is letting go. So right now, think of somebody in your life that you feel like you have some unfinished business with. Okay? Or simply notice something that's in your body, something activating in your body, and you maybe at this point don't know what it's about. So take a moment to notice what's going on. If you have a person, picture that person. If not, begin by noticing what's going on in your body. Then number two, see if you can identify what the feeling is. An alternate way is to picture somebody, even if you don't know what the feeling is, picture somebody and begin to notice what comes up for you. Notice the feeling, identify the feeling, and then identify what it's about with this person. It could be an incident. It could be something that happened that triggered some feelings in you and just never got resolved. Next, imagine expressing your feelings. If you're feeling some sadness or hurt or loss, just allow yourself to feel those feelings. If you want to say something to that person or express the anger, imagine doing that. But picture the person right in front of you and do it directly with them. Remember, this isn't about right or wrong. It's simply about acknowledging what's inside of you and going through this process to get it out. Next, we're going to go to the place of acceptance. And, you know, we can do this in your lives. You can do this in layers. You may not get everything out all in one time, but you may get a little bit of it out, and you can do this again and again, and each time go a little bit deeper with what's unfinished and what needs to be expressed. So whatever piece of this you can do right now, feel good about doing a piece of it. So acceptance, again, doesn't mean you like what happened, doesn't mean you have to like it. Acceptance is, this is the way it is, I can't do anything about it. That's what I mean by acceptance. Okay, so see if you can get to that place of acceptance again, even if it's a piece of acceptance. And then the last step, breathe, and on the exhale, see if you could just let go a little bit. Just let go of it just a little bit. Good, good, very good. Okay, and then come back here. And now use what we just did as a model for you. And you may want to revisit it with the same person, or you can keep picturing different people in your life and just imagine sitting with a person, an important person in your life. Just be there, be present, and notice what comes up. that's the indication to you of some unfinished business. I'll give you one other idea in terms of noticing unfinished business. If you have a situation where your reaction is bigger than the situation calls for, someone does some little tiny thing and you explode or you get very upset, that's an indication of unfinished business. That's an indication you're sitting on something and that you can begin exploring. Okay, good. Now, let's address your relationship to yourself. Someone, I think, earlier talked about how important it is to love yourself in order to be able to love others. Well, let's look at your relationship to yourself. I have developed a model of resilience. It has 9 components to it. The first component is your relationship to yourself. Now, one of the things that I hear all the time people doing in their lives is they make a mistake. Oh, I should have done this differently. I should have. Why didn't I? I could have. Why couldn't I? And we have all these different ways that we beat up on ourselves, that we put ourselves down, that we're judgmental with ourselves. All of these things get in the way of our relationship with ourselves, which needs to be loving, accepting, caring, supportive, and compassionate. And one of the ways that I talk about how we get in our own way here is with the concept of what I call the paradoxical theory of change. And the paradoxical theory of change, from my perspective, is that in order to grow, in order to develop, in order to move down your path in life in a positive, successful way, the first step is accepting yourself. The first step is accepting yourself. So think about this path that you're on. And think about where you're at on this path right now. Okay, you're here, wherever that is. You're somewhere on this path. Let's put my finger here, okay? What happens with most of us is we're here, but we feel we should be over here, right? I should have done it better. I should have, we misplaced the keys. God damn it. Why do I keep misplacing? Well, right now, you are a person who misplaces your keys. That's where you're at right now. And the idea is to come from a place of acceptance. Now, again, when I talk with people about this, they say, I can't accept that. That's not okay. I don't want to be. Well, I'm not saying you like it. And I'm not saying this is where you're going to stay. I'm just saying you can't be in 2 places at one time. Law of physics, right? So if here's where you're at and you're trying to be here, or you feel you should be here, all you're doing is undermining yourself because you're saying you're not okay. You're saying you're not good enough. And that only actually makes it more difficult to get to this place. So the fastest way to move down your path is to start by accepting where you're at right now. So let's do another very quick process about your relationship with yourself, okay? So think about one of the ways that you do that to yourself, that you put yourself down or that you're critical with yourself. You feel you shouldn't be doing this or you should be doing that. And then notice what feelings come up around this issue. Now again, we're going to do a very similar kind of thing. Talk to yourself. Express your feelings to yourself. Okay? But not telling yourself you should be or pointing your finger is not what I'm talking about. Just allow yourself to express whatever feelings you have within the context of this notion of acceptance, okay? Within the notion of acceptance, what we're talking about doing is simply releasing the tension of the feelings from your body so that they don't get in your way. They're there, okay? If you make a mistake, it's frequently it makes you angry. I know when I make a mistake, I get angry, right? But when I get angry, number one, I give myself permission to be angry, not at who I am, but what I just did. But then I give myself a time limit on how long I have to express that feeling toward myself. Because I'm not going to go on and on with it. So I'll give myself 5 minutes of ranting and raving to myself about what I did, and then I forgive myself and let go. But I do one other thing. One key ingredient in your process of forgiving yourself for mistakes is, okay, if there was a cost to this mistake, okay, some kind of cost, what's the benefit? How do I balance it out? And the benefit is the lesson. So if you take any time that you make a mistake, that you do something that upsets you, the way to work through it is, what's the lesson? How do I make this experience worth the cost to myself? So if you lose your keys and you have to break a window to get into your car, that's the cost. How do I be present enough here so that I learn something so I do it different the next time? Okay, I'll get one of those magnetic things and put it under my car, something like that. So the key to working through the process with yourself is finding the lesson to balance out the cost of a mistake or something that you're upset and angry with yourself about, okay? So right now, go through the feelings and then see if you can get to the place of accepting yourself, okay? See if right now, with all of your warts, with all of your faults, you can say to yourself, okay, this is who I am, this is where I'm at right now. I want to grow, I don't want to keep making these kinds of mistakes, but right now, here's where I am. I'm going to have some compassion toward myself. Compassion toward myself. I'm going to love myself right now to recognize that I'm human, I make mistakes. And then let go, and all of this will lead to you being able to be more present in the moment, more sensing, more open, and healthier. So, thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to prepare. We're going to go outside on the terrace. Larry's going to do a... Thanks, Steve. Thank you very much. I told you, he's amazing. Great, great stuff. We're going to go out in the terrace now, and we're going to do a little yoga stretch to get ready. Yeah, because we need to set the tables and get them all ready. And then we're going to have the food buffet style next door here, so it'll all be set up. All we need is about 5 minutes, and we'll be ready. So everyone outside, 5, 8, 6, 4. Actually, everyone that's still here has resilience, right, Steve? Yeah. Well, this is very exciting, and we're all honored to have Rabbi Shmuley, who has an international reputation, and he already warned me that he would prefer if I only told the good things about him. But I think we did a fairly good job of that in the booklet. And what I'm gonna do now, just for a few minutes while we settle in a little bit, we've all just had a nice meal and dessert and just gonna relax, is Genevieve, who was at last year's event, and she was probably the best one of all that actually recognized Gary Schwartz's innuendos. And she actually made up a SAIOE song that was about some of the presenters and what went on last year. And and I said, would it be possible for you to sing, because she is one of the few people on the planet that can sing without accompaniment. You have to be really good to do that. And so Genevieve is going to actually sing a song that she wrote about SAIOE last year when we were doing it at Two Bunch Palms. And everybody had a lot of enjoyment out of it. And also I want to point out that the Two Bunch Palms event, that we do have that on DVD, but it's not quite finished. So for any of you that want it, and of course the people that participated last year, we have a highlights, which is a CD, which is just voice, of course, and not video. And we put together a highlight which has her song in it, but also has a lot of the vital and good information. And so you guys a lot of you are driving, and if you participated, if you were actually part of the event, helping to put it on last year, then that would be a gift. And anyone that wants the Two Bunch Palms event DVD, we would be happy to give you that special highlight disc, but you'd have to wait for the rest of it, for the DVD to come. So, and as I said, Rabbi Shmuley is, we have all the information about him, as all the good stuff. And he will relax for a few minutes while Genevieve sings the SAIOE song that we all loved last year.
Graceful, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. As you know, we had twisted and bribed him to let me sing. I'm sorry. I'm so delighted to be a returning artist this year for something that I love so much, which is SAIOE. So, without further ado, the SAIOE theme song. SAIOE, I just learned this thing called SAIOE, and suddenly this pain will never be the same again. SAIOE, I'm getting a sense of SAIOE, appreciating life and knowing what feels right for me. SAIOE, when I feel inspiration thrill me, I am open to letting love fill me. Then I get the essence completely. Now if only I could pronounce it. It is not Japanese, and use it every day. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Rabbi, you have, actually we have three choices here. You can stand at the podium with the mic attached. You can sit and hold the mic, or you can walk around and talk. That's your choice. And we are very, very happy to have Rabbi Shmuley. Thank you.
Good evening. Ladies and assorted gentlemen. The only way that I could effectively follow that is to do a song of my own. So this song is called Shmulayo. Shmulayo. It's a song that welled up inside me as I was listening. What is your name, please? Genevieve. I'm supposed to follow a name like that too? You know, Shmuli is Hebrew for lame goat. And I'm supposed to compete with Genevieve. White virgin. Okay, I can't compete with that. Thank God with 9 children. Okay. Thank you, Genevieve. That was very uplifting. I'm sure you know the famous story of the man who receives a call from his doctor. And the doctor says, "Sit down because I have bad news and I have worse news." So the man sits down. And the doctor says, "The test results are in, and you, my friend, unfortunately have only 24 hours to live." And the man says, "That's the bad news? What could be worse than that?" And the doctor says, "I've been trying to call you since yesterday." So after such an uplifting day at SAIOE, I thought I too would start with the bad news, which will only get worse. The bad news is you must listen to me this evening for but a brief moment. The worst news is, however, that it is unfortunately a Jewish moment, which means this is like endless. There's no telling how long this is going to take. So if any of you have got things to do for Thanksgiving, I think you may have to cancel. Call your friends, call your kids. Almost every culture and every religion has a name for accidents which aren't accidents. Some call them serendipity. Others call it providence. We Jews in Hebrew call it hashgacha, divine supervision. Something is preordained. But the fact that every culture and every tradition has a name for accidents that aren't accidents demonstrates that we all have a sense of the foreshadowing of something unique and special happening, which is unintelligible. It transcends simple human logic and understanding. So when I happen to do a television interview with one Jane Geer in Los Angeles just a few months ago, expecting that that would be the last time I'd ever see her again. And yet it led to this invitation to lecture at SAIOE. I was not at first conscious of the providential nature of our meeting, Jane. To be honest, it only came to me the other night, Wednesday night, driving from Cedar City, Utah to Las Vegas this past Wednesday. It's about a 3-hour drive. I was lecturing for Southern Utah University, whose president, Michael Taft Benson, is a dear friend. His grandfather was the prophet of the Mormon Church, the president of the Mormon Church, Ezra Taft Benson. He was also the United States Secretary of Agriculture under President Dwight David Eisenhower. And Mike, I was the rabbi at Oxford University. Mike was a PhD student there. We became friends. He invited me to, every year I go to lecture at his university. And I'm driving back, and I'm going to reveal something a little bit private. I'm driving back with a young man who my daughter happens to be dating. He's a fine young man. We'll see what happens. He is in the United States Air Force. He's one of 3 Orthodox Jewish pilots in the whole Air Force. So he's based in Las Vegas. So I flew into Las Vegas. He drove up with me to give my lecture, and he was driving back. And suddenly, the only person I've told this to, honestly, is my wife. I haven't even told my daughter. As we're driving on this 3-hour drive, speaking to each other, he says to me, your daughter, and this is my eldest child, told me that 10 years ago, you were a much more magnified version of yourself. My daughter never said that to me. I had to hear it through this guy. I didn't know how to react. My first reaction was, it was very dark, late at night, we're rushing to Las Vegas, I have to catch a flight. I first started to think whether it was true. But he continued, and he said, she said that life has beaten you down somewhat. It's my eldest child. And thank God I'm very close to my children. There is nothing as special as children. This is my daughter, my first child. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I just take it in, I don't respond. The next 5 hours on the plane, I can't even sleep. Wow, my own daughter said that life has beaten me down, and I used to be a more magnified version of myself. People that meet me usually say that I'm a live wire, that I'm constantly on the move. But here was my daughter saying that that's true, but not like it used to be. I got home, I told my wife I had to speak to her, mentioned the comment to her. And I said to her, I think it is true. It is true. But I have to understand why. And honestly, I speak to you from the heart. There's a famous Talmudic expression that says that words that emanate from the heart penetrate the heart. You can't fake sincerity. This was the providential design behind my speaking tonight at SAIOE. Because I'm going to take you through the 5 points that this conference focuses on to demonstrate to you how in each of them, and my failure to live up to some of them, led to a lessening of self, that demagnification that my daughter spoke of, and how this might have occurred to some of you as well, if you're perhaps not as alive as you once were, perhaps not as hopeful. Maybe life gets to all of us somewhat. But how we could use these principles to heal, to be restored to that which we once were. Not to be more than we were, but at the very least to be exactly who we were. There's a book that I wrote that's in the back. In fact, would someone mind bringing me a copy of the Michael Jackson tapes, please? It's not important that Michael Jackson was a famous singer. What is important is that he was someone who slowly lost his innocence, and he knew it. And in 2001, he and I recorded 30 hours of conversations to discuss that. What had he lost in this world we live in? And the reason why Michael was such an interesting, excuse the word, specimen, was that he had lived life so intensely. He had lived 10 lifetimes in one lifetime. So it was easy to study what life can do to you when there is that level of intensity. Michael always wanted to retain his childlike innocence. He always wanted to retain the imagination, creativity, the sense of awe, the sense of wonder that children have. And he reached in his music and his art to hold on to those things. So many of his lyrics will therefore still resonate with us. The man in the mirror, the man who has to examine himself constantly, change himself before we can change the world, the man who wants to heal the world, make it a better place. Human Nature, all these songs were an attempt on his part to rediscover who he was before it had been lost. But what made him lose it? And what was it that was lost? That's what I want to examine. Not just in his life, but in my life, but in all of our lives. So let's begin. What is it that we all want from life? More than anything else. It can get confusing. Last night, I saw a movie called The Social Network, which is #1 in the country. It's about a young man at 20 who wanted to be, well, according to the movie, wanted to set up an internet company that would allow him to get women. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not here to slander Mark Zuckerberg. My dear friend Cory Booker, who's the mayor of Newark, just got $100 million from him for the Newark Public Schools 2 weeks ago, so that's very impressive. I'm not here, but that's what the movie says, and the movie's sort of fictionalized. But according to that, here was someone who wanted women. As he gets older, he now wants money, and he's prepared to do certain things to hold on to that money, including, according to the film, push out some of his co-founders of the company. Well, a lot of those themes resonate with us today. We want sex, we want money. People who go on American Idol, they want to be famous. People who go on a reality television show are prepared to compromise their very human dignity. They're prepared to be exploited in order to achieve recognition. Maybe that's what we want. I think it's actually quite much simpler than that. More than anything else, we want to simply be special. We want to be unique. We want to be distinguished. There are many manifestations of what we consider special. Some think that if you're rich, you're special. Some think if you're beautiful and gorgeous and you have the attention of men, you're special. Some think that if you achieve eternal youth and you never age, you're special. Some think that if you are a genius and you know everything, you're special. But whatever it is, life is the pursuit of uniqueness. That is it. In fact, there is only one human fear. There isn't the fear of death, the fear of rejection, the fear of loneliness. They all stem from a far more foundational fear. What is that fear? The fear that each and every one of us, the possibility that we are ordinary. There is no greater fear. We're certain that we're special, and we fear, however, that we're ordinary. So, and we spend our lives trying to prove that we're special and we're not ordinary. Why do we fear death? Simple. Because one day, you won't wake up. And all those people who said to you, I can't live without you because you're so special. You're my soulmate. You're my mom. You're my best friend. I would be devastated. My life would end if yours did. Those people are going to cry. They're going to mourn you. They're going to go for therapy. And guess what? Then they're going to live another day. Thereby proving all along that the earth can spin on its axis without you. You are absolutely replaceable. Quite ordinary. There is no one so special that the world cannot exist without them. Same thing is true of fear of rejection. Someone will reject you because you're not that special. You're actually quite... You know, I wrote a whole book on adultery called Kosher Adultery. It's not that kosher. The essence of the book is to identify what makes adultery so exciting and to bring it into marriage. Because all the most famous women of world literature are all adulterous wives. Name one faithful wife who's famous in world literature. There isn't one. But the adulterous wives, Anna Karenina, Lady Chatterley, Madame Bovary, Tess, I mean, the list goes on and on. Why is it that people who cheat are so... the book seeks to identify that. But as I interviewed so many women who were cheated on, that's why they experience so much pain. When the man who puts you at the center of your existence, of his existence, and says that you are his son, and he will forever be a moon that orbits around you, that he will forever bask in your light, suddenly replaces you with someone else, that is an a priori proof that you were never special, and you are just plain ordinary, and nothing hurts more, nothing. In fact, by identifying the fact that we all want to be special and we all fear being ordinary, we can answer a question that has forever perplexed some of the world's greatest minds. You know, the man considered to be the most insightful in the late 19th century, early 20th century was Sigmund Freud, who easily ranks as one of the most influential human beings of all time. In 1938, when he was running from Hitler and he left Vienna and went to London, he famously said that so much of the inner workings of the human mind had revealed themselves to him. You know, so much of the basic psychological furniture of the modern world is based on Freud. Expressions like insecurity, Freudian slips, subconscious. Before Freud, people didn't know what this terminology was. That's how central he was to our ideas of ourselves and our world today. You're born in the image of God. You're created in his image. There is something of infinite value, a divine spark. It could never be added to, and it can never be subtracted from. And those of us who have a happy childhood, that's all we mean. It doesn't mean that there was no tension in the house. It just means that two parents made you feel there was nothing you had to do in order to be special. You didn't have to do a triple somersault on the diving board. Look, Mom, what I can do. You didn't have to win at sports. You didn't have to get A's. Even if you brought home a C-, you were still special. But so few of us are granted that unconditional gift of love. So we spend our whole life trying to prove ourselves, and we're tired, and we're exhausted. Just one proof of it. America used to persecute Native Americans, and it still hasn't made that situation whole. The greatest form of persecution was to African Americans, and the absolute abomination of slavery and Jim Crow laws. And we, thank God, have come a long way. We have a black president. Do you know who the most persecuted group in America is today, although they're utterly unaware of it? It's not Jews, and it's not gays, and it's not blacks. It's women. Can I just prove it to you? We have made it a crime for women to do the two most natural things that any human being does. Number one, to eat. It is a crime to eat. You need to feel guilty every time you put food into your mouth. Can anyone imagine something more unnatural than feeling guilty to eat? I'm not saying to eat vast quantities that make you into the Pillsbury Doughboy or Aunt Jemima. I'm talking about just to eat. And the second thing, we've made it a crime for women to live, to age. You know, I counsel women about the most intimate, secret details of their lives. I write books on sex. I'll ask a woman, when was your first sexual encounter? Oh, it was when I was 13, with my brother. I'm kidding. They'll tell me even facts like that. But then when I'll say, and how old are you? How dare you? Now you've crossed the line. How dare you ask me my age? Could you imagine women are ashamed to say their age? If that isn't an assault on the two most basic things, it's unbelievable. We have created a culture where a woman shoving a needle into her head is something she pays for. Forms of torture that were employed in the Spanish Inquisition are things that women today pay for. Here's $100. Shove that needle into my head. We've made women feel they have to do in order to be. To be a woman in America is to be permanently inadequate, utterly ordinary. You are never blonde enough. Your eyes are never blue enough. Your legs are never long enough. Your chest is never large enough. And one thing's for sure, you are never thin enough, and boy, oh boy, are you never young enough. Not enough, not enough, not enough. And then we wonder why we're all so miserable. Because we can't just be. We have to do in order to be. There is nothing that will ever snuff out your happiness more than a feeling of ordinariness. The great sin of human life, of existence, is to ever make anyone feel ordinary. And the greatest mitzvah, the greatest virtue, the greatest good deed is to validate someone's uniqueness. It's to make them feel like they're special. That's why when you remember someone's birthday, it's their day. They came into the world today. If you just ignore it, it's like you ignored them. Or to have someone walk by you and not even greet them. Do you know in my religion and Judaism, it says one of the most important commandments is to simply smile in the morning when you see someone. Acknowledge them. Show that they make an impact and you're excited to see them. When you say good morning, there's something moral to it. You're telling them they're special. But when someone walks right by you because they're not important enough to be acknowledged, that's when they're going to have to, that's when they begin to feel, I better make more money. I better look better. There's something I must do to gain their attention. The reason you're here is to invalidate that unhealthy, corrosive, destructive lie. It is a lie that we are ordinary. And there doesn't have to be 1,000 people here. You could be the select few who get it. You didn't come to a seminar about how to make more money, and you didn't come to a seminar about how to look younger, and you didn't come to a seminar about how to color coordinate your clothing better. You came to a seminar to learn how to be. And as I go through these 5 points, I want to just first conclude that lengthy introduction by reading something to you, okay? This was so important when I heard it. Remember, again, Michael Jackson isn't just, look, he was a precious soul, and I miss him, but what makes him special is that he attained all those doing things that the world respects in the 2 most important areas. He became a billionaire, and he became the most famous man in the world. It's what we all want today, money and fame. He reached both at a level that few human beings before him or after him have. In the course of our conversations, he suddenly said something to me that sent a chill down my spine. So that you know, this quotation in the entire book is verbatim, word for word. The editing that I did on his words was some punctuation, and that's it. This is what he said. I'm going to say something to you. You're saying it to me. I have never said before. And this is the truth. I have no reason to lie to you, and God knows I am telling the truth. I think all my success and fame, and I have wanted it. I've wanted it because I wanted to be loved. That's all. That's the real truth. I wanted people to love me, truly love me, because I never really felt loved. I said I know I have an ability. Maybe if I sharpen my craft, maybe people will love me more. I just wanted to be loved because I think it's very important to be loved. And to tell people that you love them and to look in their eyes and say it. You know, when Michael said that to me, I was in utter disbelief. You mean the most successful artistic career, arguably, of the 20th century, certainly one of the 2 or 3, was never even about music? It was never about art. It was never about money. It was just to feel special, to feel that he could earn love because it wasn't given to him as a free gift. And no quote that I know of in existence better illustrates how we confuse being and doing. Michael wanted to be loved. He felt he had to do his craft in order to earn love. And that's ultimately what destroyed him, that he couldn't feel loved. That's why I said that when I was told that maybe I'm a less alive version of my own self, maybe there are certain things that I lost that lead to this art of being. So let's go through them. Number one, a sense of. And this is my rendition. This is all my rendition of SAIOE. No doubt all of you will have your own as well. What is a sense of? And I'm relating this to my own personal experience. I remember the first time I saw Mont Blanc, about an hour and a half drive from Geneva in Switzerland, tallest peak in Europe, one of the most beautiful mountains in the world. Many pens had been named after it. It was gorgeous. It was just beautiful. I mean, the Swiss Alps, and this is its tallest peak, and it's covered in snow year-round. As I looked at it, I remember three emotions going through me. The first was, look at that mountain. Boy, I wonder if I could climb it. In other words, the first reaction was, look how vast it is. It makes me feel insignificant. I have to demonstrate my mastery over it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. In its presence, I am rendered small. So I must prove myself. That was my first reaction. I'm not even a mountain climber, but I started thinking, did other people climb it? I'm not crazy. But maybe some helicopter can even drop me there and I can lie and say I climbed it. Take a picture. Tweet it. So the first reaction was one of dominance. Could I dominate this thing that was bigger than me? The second reaction was, I said to myself, I wonder if there's a ski resort up there. Could I enjoy it? Could I render it useful for my own pleasure-seeking aesthetic purposes? The first reaction is one of human dominance. The second is utilitarian. How could I use it for my own advantage? Maybe I could build my own ski lodge there and make money from it. It then struck me that there was a third response. To stand before it and behold. To not have my own personal reaction to it, to allow it to overwhelm me, to move me. Not to absorb it through the filter, through the prism of my own ego, but to just to stand in awe of something majestic, of something truly wondrous, of something truly awe-inspiring. And I believe that the same is true when you stand as a man in front of a woman, that there are always those three responses. You can either, one, how can I dominate her, subjugate her, and bend her to my will, which is what a lot of men first feel. Number two, how can I enjoy her? What sexual delights, erotic pleasures can I get from her? And the third, to stand and behold. How can I allow her to overwhelm me? That's true love. And it's an increasingly rare event in life today. It's the reason why there are so many divorces. We're thinking about dominating each other, exploiting each other, but never to just drink in the majesty of one another. The man who stays in love with his wife sees something majestic in his wife. I just wrote a column today on the plane. it'll appear tomorrow, God willing, in the Washington Post, I hope, if they accept it. All about this. How the condom culture is destroying our sense of the awe and majesty of sex. To be carried away by a sexual experience that's so powerful that you both end up in a promised land of great bliss. Sex is becoming so deeply manipulative. I was reacting to a story in today's New York Times about a woman at Duke who wrote a mock thesis, but of a true event. She had sex with did anyone read this in today's New York Times? You read it. She had sex with 13 student athletes and rated their performance in a graph. So now the women are doing what the men used to do. And she was trying to show that she could make men degrade them as sexual objects. So she had been corrupted by men. Men had played this stupid game for centuries. She would do the same. By the way, it's the reason why, this is very interesting. It would take too much time to develop this theme, but I just want to mention it. You know, sex is dying in America. There's a sexual famine in America. To tell you how bad it is, 1 out of 3 American couples, married couples, are entirely sexless. 1 out of 3 American marriages is platonic. The other 2 out of 3 have sex how often? Anyone know? All right. The other 2 out of 3, anyone know? Wait a second. Who said? Wait, who just said once a month? Okay, you just want a free counseling session? No. No, I'm kidding. You said once a month too? Okay. Who said twice a week?
I did. Hopeful man.
Twice a week? Jane, you think that every man in America is on a Viagra drip? You think every man in America is like a Levitra IV? You think every man in America is Superman?
Yes.
The national average is, someone said it before, is once a week. It's 52 times a year. Well, that's not bad. Until you read on for 7 minutes at a time. 7 minutes of sex a week. And that includes the time he spends begging. That was a joke, I think. Now, why is sex dying? One of the reasons is that sex in America is so goal-oriented. It's all about orgasm. It's about sexual climax. It's a fascinating question. You have sex with someone and they ask, how was it for you? That's kind of weird. For you? Wasn't this supposed to be a mutual experience? But, so because we rush to the finish line, right? 1 second the guy is like so alive and he even knows your name. And the next second, he is a corpse. One moment you're calling your girlfriends to tell them how exciting it was. The next second, you're calling the mortician. You have a dead body in your bed. So this is fascinating. Sexual climax, orgasm, is actually killing off sex. Now, when we speak of a sense of, this feeling of awe, of standing in front of something so large, for many of us, one of the only tangible experiences of that is to be in a carnal setting of physical love, which of course is not just physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, with another human being, and have that overwhelming, orgasmic, ecstatic moment where you lose yourself, where you are rendered almost insignificant. Something so overwhelming takes place between the two of you as to transport you to a state of nirvana. Windows of consciousness open, and there's a certain malleability of character. During that orgiastic moment, the human personality becomes so utterly flexible. Rigidity disappears. And you would think that two could be orchestrated together as one, as the Bible says, bone of one bone, flesh of one flesh. Instead, that sense of moment, to be truly aware, has become something that undermines the sexual experience, the goal orientation of Western sexuality, as opposed, say, to the means orientation of Tantra, where sexual climax is not the focus. But it just goes to show you how we are subverting even the few tools available to us to have that sense of awe. to have that sense of wonder, to have that sense of infinite mystery. It begins by people looking at each other and not thinking how they could manipulate one another and bend the other to their will, to let someone be. That's why the Hebrew greeting, when you meet someone, is Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you. It's not about me. In this greeting, I honor you. I allow you to be. You are making the impression on me. And they, of course, respond, Aleichem Shalom. And Muslims say the same thing. Salam alaikum, alaikum salam. To have a true appreciation of the sense of, to be rendered insignificant by something so much larger than you, is something missing in our lives today, where we have become our own cause. You know, it's very interesting. If you look at celebrities who actually survive fame, and very few do, I mean, some die, some just become ruined, and they're on their 15th marriage, and their kids are in rehab. The ones who survive it, and they are rare, they all have a sense of something larger than them. Bono is arguably the healthiest celebrity in the world. People really respect him, and he deserves it. Notice that his entire life has been about causes larger than himself. Number one, he's married to the same woman for 27 years. Which, for a rock star, come on! The whole idea of a rock star is to have sex with groupies. Number two, he's always been a religious Christian. U2 started as a Catholic rock band, singing gospel music, as did Elvis, by the way. About 70% of all Elvis's music was gospel music. Number three, and most importantly, his cause is Africa. When you mention his name, you immediately conjure up Africa. I used to say this to Michael all the time. You cannot be the cause. When someone says your name, they have to conjure up something larger than you. To have a sense of is to be granted an immunity to the destructive forces of the ego. And it's to have that sense of awe and wonder. By the way, it also ensures that you never get bored of things. Look how bored we are of life today. Which leads us to appreciation. The moment you are able to acknowledge those things which are grander and majestic, of course, the next thing that follows is appreciation. My God, when you look at something like Mont Blanc, and you don't think about skiing it and climbing it and photographing it, but just to sit there and say, how could something so beautiful even exist? As you lose yourself, you are filled, the cavity of self, that emptying out of the ego is filled automatically with the bountiful waters of appreciation. In the Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, it's called the Makom Panoi. When God wanted to create the world, God is everywhere. So where was the world going to exist? So the Zohar says that God emptied out a space within himself, a Makom Panoi, a void, a gaping chasm. And into that void was the bountiful light of God. This magnetic sense of the appreciation of the divine. When people give you love and you create a space within yourself to receive that love, you feel such a deep sense of gratitude. It's not gratitude that's contrived. It's not manipulative. It's absolutely organic. Do you ever notice that when you hug someone, David Aaron says this in his book, I think it's called Infinite Light. When you hug someone, you create a space within yourself, quite literally, for them to exist. To love is to expand, quite literally. It's to move your extremities away from your torso, opening up opening yourself up to attack, to the possibility of attack. You're becoming very vulnerable. And within that elasticity, someone else can exist. And you appreciate how they now fill you up. To live in fear is the exact opposite. What is the quintessential posture of fear? It's to bring in your extremities, to protect your torso, and it leads to a shriveling of self, a devolution. It's not to evolve, it's to devolve. It's to revert back to an embryonic state. There can be no appreciation. How can you appreciate something when you think it's going to attack you or hurt you? Fear and appreciation are absolutely in conflict. But love and appreciation are one and the same. In the Jewish religion, there is no greater insult than to be called a kafoi tov, an ingrate, someone incapable of appreciation. It is such an important theme in the Bible that when Moses, the greatest prophet, is saved as an infant in a pitch basket sent floating on the Nile River, because Pharaoh has decreed that all the boys have to die, because the Jewish Redeemer was going to be born, so he said, kill them all. Later, 80 years later, when Moses returns as the great Savior, the great Redeemer, and God says the first plague against the Egyptians is to smite the Nile River and transform it into blood, Moses cannot perform that plague. His brother Aaron has to do it. He has to show appreciation to a river, to an inanimate object. And by the way, the water that saved him wasn't even the same water. It had flowed away 80 years earlier. Even so, it had saved his life. That was the level of appreciation that God demanded. More importantly, the third plague is that Moses smites the dust of Egypt, turns into lice. But the dust of Egypt had saved Moses' life when he smote an Egyptian taskmaster who was killing someone. And he hid his body in the dust. And God said, you can't smite the dust. You have to show appreciation to dust. When I was a little boy, my parents fought a lot. And they ultimately divorced. And I have never recovered fully from the effects of the divorce. And I don't think I ever will. Divorce is forever. It's one of the great tragedies of our time that we don't understand its tragedy. It has become so commonplace. It doesn't mean that you should feel guilty if you're divorced. Sometimes marriages don't work. It just means we shouldn't belittle its consequences. My parents were fighting. And my father had very little money. He was a struggling businessman, immigrant to this country, trying very hard to make something financially of himself. And he had this old, beaten-up van. And it was always breaking down. And it would just lead to unnecessary tension in my parents' marriage. I remember, a call comes, my father says that the van broke down. And we didn't have enough money for a tow truck. So my mother decided that she was going to drive her old station wagon behind my father's van, and she would slowly push him home. Was it going to work? So my mother drives off, and all of us are waiting. About 45 minutes later, I see my father's van being pushed every 50 feet until it's pushed into the driveway, and my mother's car comes up behind it, and she parks, and everybody goes in. You know, there was a time when I would have been ashamed to say this because it's a weird story, but I'll never forget this. I must have been 6 or 7. I walked over to the front fender of my mother's car, and I kissed it because that fender, that inanimate object, had stopped my parents fighting that night. And it didn't make a difference that it was a piece of flippin' metal. I had an obligation to show appreciation. And when I speak about what my daughter said, that there's some of me that hasn't made it over the past 10 years, some of me left behind, that was the first thing I said to my wife. I don't want to feel like a victim. I believe in being empowered and all that good stuff. But sometimes feeling unappreciated, I think that's been the #1 cause of feeling diminished, feeling less alive. I've chosen a somewhat controversial path. Not all rabbis write about sex. Not all rabbis counsel people like Michael Jackson. Not all. The point is, I've chosen a somewhat unorthodox course. I'm an Orthodox rabbi. They call me the unorthodox Orthodox rabbi. Okay. That means that, or whether it's, I'm an Orthodox rabbi. I have a gay brother. It's a very controversial issue in religion. And I write about homosexuality all the time. Because I think religion has to treat all people with dignity. I think that's the essence of religion. And you don't always feel appreciation. You feel attacked, you feel maligned, you feel belittled, and it gets to you after a while. There is nothing that makes someone feel more alive than showing appreciation, and there's nothing that makes someone feel more ordinary than the lack of appreciation. There's nothing more hurtful than being in a marriage or in a romantic relationship where you never hear thank you. You never hear, you look amazing. Thank you for everything you do for me. I had a husband and wife that came to me and they were fighting. And the wife says, I can't stay in this marriage. Here I am. I have 3 kids and a husband, but I'm the loneliest woman on earth. And her husband said, how could you say that? That's just like so insulting. So she says to him, last night, 2 hours, I was in the kitchen. I made you your favorite meal. And you didn't even say thank you. So he says, I should say thank you for like chicken and rice? I work every day. I pay the bills. No one thanks me. You're spoiled. You want everything. You made chicken. What was the thank you? And I waited for him to calm down, and I looked right at him, peered deeply into his eyes, and I said to him, you fool. You blind, blind fool. That wasn't a plate of chicken and rice. Your wife's not a caterer. She doesn't work in some chicken slaughtering factory. That was a plate of love. She did it because she loves you. That's why she wants you to simply acknowledge that it was a plate of love. But you are so blind. And that's why he can't show appreciation. You see, the lack of appreciation results from blindness. You don't see all the good that people do for you. All you see is what they don't do for you because you can't see past yourself. Your ego is so in the way. You're putting your hand in front of your eyes, and of course you can see nothing. The blind can appreciate so little. You have to open your eyes and see. It's all it takes. To be gracious, to have an open heart. Which leads us to inspiration. The commodity most sorely lacking in our lives. If it's true that I've been diminished over the past 10 years, more than anything else, it's through a loss of inspiration. So what were the things that once inspired me? Feeling God's love once inspired me. Feeling the love of strangers and friends inspired me. Believing in great causes, believing in my own potential. But I somehow allowed other people to convince me that I was mistaken about that potential. That I had all these dreams, and if they didn't all pan out, maybe I really was ordinary after all. The essence of inspiration is the acknowledgement that I am born for great things. You see, once you have a sense of the large things, and that I can actually appreciate them and see their majesty, which leads to appreciating the fact that I play a role in all of this, that I am part of this grand design, this grand plan, and that I'm born with unique divine potential. That leads to my personal inspiration to make something of myself. The greatest sin in our religion is suicide. And I don't mean to kill yourself literally. I mean to leave a part of yourself dead. To leave a part of yourself underdeveloped. To leave a part of your heart that has not been maximized to the full. To leave a part of your creativity, your imagination. Do you know why we have so little inspiration today? Because we don't believe in our potential. There is no culture on earth that can watch 5 hours of TV, mind-numbing, soul-crippling TV, and still believe in your potential. You can't be inspired by junk, by garbage. We don't believe in ourselves. I believe that real inspiration comes from one word. It comes from the word hero. When I say we all want to be special, we all believe in our uniqueness, what I'm really saying is we all want to be heroes. Every Hollywood movie is about the great hero. A hero is not someone who, like Hannibal, crosses the Alps on an elephant to cut swaths through the Roman hordes. The hero is not Bill Gates, who invents a new operating system, becomes the richest man in the world. The hero is he or she who gains total mastery over themselves. Ezuhu Gibor, our ancient rabbi, said, who is the true hero? Hakovesh Yitzro, the man or woman who is the master of their passions, who is able to cultivate every passion, who is passionate about everything they do. They are fully invested because they believe in themselves completely and they don't allow anyone to diminish them. And I've been guilty of that, and maybe you have as well, allowing other people to dictate whether you play a role, allowing other people to dictate whether you have an essential, vital place in this great plan, or whether you're less significant. You know, in America, it's unbelievable. Could we really be inspired in a culture that reads People magazine as if Brangelina's adopting half of Chad is more important than what your kid did in school that day? How much self-loathing must we be filled with to read endlessly about celebrities? My God, be more arrogant, please. It's almost as if we've convinced ourselves that 2% of the population, what I call genetic celebrities, people who are born beautiful or tall, with athletic gifts or great financial prowess, are the people who we should follow forever and talk about and read about. And in the process, lose ourselves and live vicariously through them. I know men who walk around in New York and New Jersey, where I live, wearing football jerseys that say Manning on them. And I walk over to them and I say, is that your name, Manning? It must be your name. No. This is Eli Manning. He's the quarterback of the Giants. What does that have to do with you? You want to watch the guy and blow off some steam once a week? No problem. But to wear his name, for goodness sake? Inspiration comes from knowing your name. Inspiration comes from believing in your potential. I believe with every fiber of my being that God placed me on this earth to make a difference. And in God Almighty, I am going to make that difference. That's self-inspiration and self-motivation. And no one will ever make me feel like I don't matter. Because we're running out of time. I'm going to deal with openness and essence together. Because I've gone on for too long. You know, there's a very beautiful Kabbalistic metaphor that says that for a bird to soar, it requires wings. 2 wings. Notice, however, as the Zohar points out, the 2 wings have to be on opposite sides. If the bird had 2 wings on its right side, it would just flop on its back. Same thing on its left side. It requires antithetical propulsion, pushing against itself in order to fly. That is the essence of openness. I cannot be me without your opposing view. In other words, America is so divided. 24 days there's going to be an election. It's putrid. Who the hell wants to watch all these political ads? It's not that politics are not important. Politics is very important. Politics are a godly profession when done with divine justice. There has to be a 2-party system. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Does anyone want to live in China with this one party? Anyone want to live in the Soviet Union? So why do they abuse each other so much? Why does each say, the Republicans are convinced Obama is the Antichrist, he's destroying the country. And the liberals are convinced that the Republicans are selfish and mean and only care about themselves. If you don't have 2 wings pushing in the opposite direction, masculine and feminine, but joined onto a larger body politic, whether it's the United States of America, whether it's a marriage and a family, you cannot be you without the opposite side being it. Your identity is absolutely dependent on something which is your opposite. That's why when God created Adam alone, he said it is not good for man to be alone. Lo tov hayos adam levado. I will make him a helpmate who is against him, opposed him. There's a beautiful Talmudic expression that says, I have learned much from my friends, but I have learned all from my critics. But it's a very difficult thing to listen to criticism. We have to be open. And this is why, you know why we're not completely open? Openness in America is based on a flawed idea. That idea is called tolerance. Tolerance is probably, arguably, the most repugnant word in the English language. We all aspire to tolerance. What does tolerance mean? To tolerate someone. It means to stomach them. It means I have no choice but to put up with you. Not that I have anything to learn from you. I'm not enriched by you. I just tolerate you. It's a disgusting word when you think about it. Can you imagine if a husband said that to his wife? Honey, it's your birthday today. I bought you this present. I want you to know I tolerate you. Oh, we said it to one of our children. Night, night. I hope you liked the little story. Me and mommy really tolerate you. It's a disgusting word. You know why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world? Look around. You know, I travel a lot. You go to Europe, everybody's white. You go to Africa, everybody's black. I love the majestic difference in America, where we are enriched by each other. And we're losing that because we're not truly open. We don't understand. I can only be me through you being you. We complete each other in the most literal sense. But that comes through being able to identify not someone's externalities, but honing in on their essence. What is the difference between the external and the essential? When I say that I'm going to learn from someone, I'm going to actually gain from someone, what do I mean? Gain from their skills? Gain from their experience? What do we mean by their essence? Their irreducible essence. What is our irreducible essence? When you say that someone is a soulmate as opposed to just a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that idea of a soul connection or a soul friend, what do we mean by those words? To remove all the things that are inconsequential, that are ephemeral, that are transient, and to actually identify the core. What are those things? Sanctity. God bless you, Asher. In the Kabbalah, the word essence comes from etzem. Etzem means essence, and etzem also means bone. It's the part of you that is unbreakable. The part of you that is absolutely solid. The part of you that if everything else is stripped away, that's what remains. It's what we call your gift. Each and every one of us, when we say that you're special, not to conclude everything we've been talking about, that you're born special, that you are special, that you don't have to work on it, each and every one of us is born with an irreducible gift. That's what we mean by the divine spark. It's so precious that if someone were to take it out of this world through murder, God forbid, the Talmud says you've thrown the entire universe into imbalance because it requires that essential gift. Identifying that gift, which is often a lifelong process, is our first responsibility. Because if we don't know our gift, if we don't know what our irreducible essence is, then we end up aping someone else's gift and never knowing ourselves. We never achieve any degree of self-knowledge. That's where peer pressure comes from as kids. We want to be like someone else to be accepted. We forfeit our individuality. 90% of us do it every day. We put on clothing to look like everybody else. We put on someone else's name, Calvin Klein, Dolce & Gabbana, anything that will allow us to feel special. And then we buy the most expensive cars, move into expensive neighborhoods, always assuming someone else's gift, trying to somehow erase our individuality because we're so afraid to be alone. Instead of embracing that uniqueness. If I didn't wake up tomorrow, God forbid, if aliens came and lifted me up to their planet for 30 years of sexual experimentation, what would be missing here on this earth? So let me conclude by saying, if it is true that I have moved away from who I was by not being as alive, it's due to a number of circumstances. Sense of awe and majesty might have been diminished slightly. Maybe I didn't appreciate my blessings enough. Maybe I have lost some of the sources of inspiration or the ability to inspire myself. Maybe as I get older, I'm not as open to ideas and other people as I once was. But more than anything else, really, if I've been diminished, it's because I am not sufficiently appreciating my own gift. I live in America. I watch movies about a 26-year-old who's worth $10 billion having invented Facebook, and I say, maybe that was my gift. Maybe he took my gift. Maybe I ought to sue him and take at least some money in exchange for the gift. Or I might watch football and think, that's what I should have been, a great athlete. That was my gift. Or I watch Barack Obama. I should have been president. That was my gift. Don't think these things don't go through my mind every single day. They do. But I have to be restored to that's their gift. What is my gift? And it should never be measured by how many people it touches, how much money it makes. It should be measured by the degree to which it is a blessing to others. That's how you know what your gift is. When you begin to see that your interaction with others is a blessing to them, that you instill within them a sense of awe, wonder, majesty, and appreciation, that there is an openness in them, that's when you begin to see what your gift is. And that's when you find happiness and fulfillment and a sense of your own uniqueness. That's when you know that you are absolutely irreplaceable. It is true that every person is irreplaceable. It doesn't mean that the earth's going to spin on its axis. The earth won't spin on its axis without you. It will. But it won't be the same earth, not without you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be invited. Thank you.
I think that this might be a good note to finish on. It's up to you guys, but it's getting late. And I think everything has been covered. And I just want to thank all of you for being part of SAIOE and for inspiring me. And I've been asked a few times recently, you know, what do I want? What do I want out of SAIOE? And that's always been kind of a knowing. You know, it's kind of like I know what I want. I don't really have words for it. But I think I have some words for it now. And I think I've had a lot of help from a lot of people. And I appreciate when people say to me, I don't understand. What's the purpose? What are you trying to do? Well, the essence of SAIOE is to basically know the gift that you are. And you've heard me say that before. And the gift of SAIOE is to allow yourself to be you. And the way you do that is by getting a sense of yourself and also getting a sense of others, because you and the others are one. And it's true that Albert Einstein said that every person lives in their own dimension of time and space. And the rabbi touched on that when he basically said, if you're gone, it doesn't really change anything, in the sense that when you're gone, since you lived in your own dimension of time and space and everyone else lives in their dimension of time and space, the world will continue to rotate on its axis. But by the same token, it really isn't the same if you're not here. And it's not the same, especially if you're not you. So that's something we all struggle with. And, you know, it's often been said we tend to teach what we need the most. You've heard that. We tend to teach what we need the most. I don't know about you, Rabbi, but it's true with me. I need SAIOE. And I also found something else about SAIOE. I found that it really isn't effective and it really doesn't work alone. Because there's, just like there's power in prayer when everyone prays, there's power in anything in numbers. And if you have a sense of what life is and the gift of life, and you really live with appreciation, not judgment, but appreciation. And if you truly are inspired about life and you're open to other people's feelings and opinions, and you really, really, really live life for the essence of what it is, then a lot of the problems that the world has and a lot of problems that we have individually are going to just drift away. They're just going to go away. So I would like to thank all of you, and we had a little bit more to go. I was going to basically talk a little bit about essence, but I think I can just say it in a few words. Essence is every aspect of who you are. That's your essence. It's all of you. There's no defining any part of it. It's all of you. Every essence of who you are. And when I was in the back and I was speaking with Rabbi Shmuley, he talked about the fact that you really can't, well, I'm going to paraphrase, but you can't run from yourself. Wherever you go, there you are. And so you really have to be honorable. And you can't demand respect. You really have to earn it. You have to be part of the solution. And I think that SAIOE helps that. And one of the things I love about SAIOE is the fact that it draws people together no matter what their religion is. It doesn't matter what their job is, their color is, their anything about them. It basically recognizes that every person is beautiful and every person is worth loving. So my dream is that people will take the things that are so beautiful and powerful. Children believe that the world, when they're little, they just believe that the world materializes in front of them and revolves around them. We all know, any of you that are moms or dads, you know that the little ones believe that the world materializes in front of them and surround and everything that occurs in their life is about them, because they truly live in their own dimension of time and space. And we are taught in our schools, in our lives, to basically discount that. That feeling of looking at everything that you see, every time you see it, like you've seen it for the first time. We lose that. And I actually believe, and this is a little bit radical, but I'm going to, you know, kind of, Gary, you go there someplace, so I'm going to go there, and I'm going to say that it is possible that that disease and aging itself is when you start to have a feeling of, I've been there, done that, when you lose that awe, when you lose that feeling of how exciting things are, and when you stop bringing that up. And we get hammered when we're little, you know, it's kind of like, sit still, pay attention. So if SAIOE can set you free, if SAIOE can give you some simple, and another thing about SAIOE is you don't have to memorize volumes. You don't have to learn, you don't have to read 50 books to understand it. It's just very simple. somebody a lot greater than I'll ever be was Albert Einstein, who simply said that the answer lies in simplicity. It's very rare that it's not simple. Some of you have heard me tell you that I had a professor in college that taught me physics and engineering that basically looked me right in the eye and he said, everything is easy if you know how. Now just think about that. Just think about if you're a child and you're taught that everything is easy if you know how. And it's easy to know how. And if you don't understand something, just ask a question and ask another question and ask a lot of questions. And when I was little and I was in school, I remember asking a math teacher, I said, how come if multiplication is basically addition, a multiple of numbers, if multiplication is kind of a shortcut to addition, then how come a minus times a minus is a plus and a plus times a minus is a minus? And I asked two different math teachers that, and in both cases they just said, that question is irrelevant. Don't ask that question. That's just simply the way it is. When I got further along and I met Mr. Mabin, who basically taught advanced engineering and designed some of the fastest planes in the world, and was teaching because they didn't have enough teachers that could teach physics and advanced engineering, and he said to me, I told him that, and he said, well, that's very simple. He said, they didn't know. Because when you teach, you don't have to know that. All you have to do is know that it is a minus times a minus applies. You just have to know the answers. And that's the way our children are taught. They're taught to know the answers. And you get the answers, and the answers are what's in the book, and the answers are what the teacher tells you. And as I've said before, when Einstein was invited to Europe to actually work on aptitude and IQ, and the basis that we would be able to know how smart a kid is and to make them grow into that smartness, and we'd be able to actually understand intelligence. And he never said a word in the entire conference, and at the end he was approached and they said, Dr. Einstein, we haven't heard you say anything. And he said, well, aptitude or IQ is not a measure of intelligence. And they said, well, we don't understand. What is? And he said, imagination, of course. Imagination, of course. Can you remember when you were a kid and the teacher would ask you to tell you what he imagined or what he believed or what she felt like or what she thought? It was all bam, 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 bam. And Einstein's also against memory. Remember I talked about that, memory. Memory is unimportant, he said. Of course, now we have computers. We know that's true. But they asked him, how do you remember all the physics formulas? And he said, because I use them. And it dawned to me that, can you imagine if children learned language and they learned mathematics and they learned spelling and they learned it with imagination and they learned it with an understanding of what it means and how important it is? Can you imagine if you were going to learn French and what you were taught was not the language at all at first. You were taught about the country and about famous French people, and you were taught about the customs, and you were taught about how beautiful the language sounds, and you had all of this, and you became excited about that before you learned one word of the language. Well, that's SAIOE. That's basically having a sense of life, appreciating, and being inspired. Okay, I'm going to end now. Does anyone have a burning question? Okay. Thank you very much.
So, so where there's something that happens between worry and fear and frustration and appreciation, and that gap is filled with forgiveness. And that's always been my tough part. Because I'm a scientist, I'm like, they did that, and I can't undo that they did that. So, yeah, it's just like it's, you know, and so, can you describe in 10 words or less, how do you, when you're in a moment where you're frustrated, shift into, get all, gap, you know, for me it's the Grand Canyon, that little gap between frustration and appreciation.
So maybe what does forgiveness look like for her?
Well, or what does the process of appreciation look like that jumps across that gap somehow?
It's a surrender to like, okay, it's not the way I thought it was. I can't understand it, but I know this is serving, and I surrender. And then when I do that, I actually get the answers. I tap into a whole new source of information.
You know, what you're describing is there's a moment where you first zoom out on the whole picture, realize that there's something serving you for the highest good.
That is what
Let go of the entire, so you literally like, what do you turn away from the whole, you know, zoom out and look at the sun or something? And
If
then,
I can walk away, I will. If I can't, I just zoom out on a more energetic level.
So go back to what Bob said, you know, to look to change things in your life. Most people go to these conferences because they want change in their life. You know, again, the danger about that is to think that you have any control over life at all. You don't. The only thing you have control over is you. And the more and more open you can become, the more and more life you're going to be able to experience. You know, and again, it's not about your life working out and you getting the things that you want, because you're right back into preferences. It's about living life, and of all of the different things in SAIOE, they're all important, each one of these things. The openness part is something that you can't do with your mind. You cannot do it from
Your
here.
mind gets in the way.
You cannot do it from here.
My experience is that if you would ask me what's common among people who often feel uninspired, they typically are either depressed or they're fatigued or they're angry. They're certainly losing their sense of feeling of love and so on. They're typically not surrounding themselves with people who can inspire them. They haven't learned that, you know, if you, for example, if you want to become healthy, it helps to make friends that will nurture your living in a healthy life. The reason Canyon Ranch was so successful is it created a community of people that reinforced that process. You know what I discovered recently? It's partly your fault. I discovered recently that the people who I end up choosing to be around me have certain qualities. One of them is clearly loving. Yes, they're very intelligent. Yes, they typically creative. But what I hadn't also thought was they're all inspired people. They inspire me and I inspire them. It's mutual. You know, you're with certain people and when you're with them, you have more energy after you've left than before. And with other people, if anything, you feel drained. When you're with people where it's mutually inspiring, you end up, each of you end up having more energy and more enthusiasm and more sense of fuel.
A couple of nights ago, I was thinking about, you know, what should I say this time? I've been to several SAIOs before, and we've talked about presenting SAIO from the physical senses, the sense of, rather, from physical sense, and also from the idea of the intuition. So I was talking to Bob, and I said, well, how can we make this about the heart, because it's the secrets of love. And I said to him, I don't feel with my brain and I don't think with my heart. And it's just the other way around. And he had that little enigmatic smile on his face, just like he is now. And a couple of nights ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning. running in the background. So help me God, I'm not making this up. It was Robert's spirit talking. And what he was saying to me was, wherever two or more of us are gathered, remember that. And I know that the implication was, there is love. I believe that it's so critically important for us to be able to get a sense of and love ourselves, because we can only love another as much as we can love and respect ourselves.
I think one thing that I have learned is that it's a lot easier to maintain and inspire personal living if you choose people who are themselves share that approach. And I've come to discover that I'm privileged that most of the people who are closest to me, they themselves are sources of inspiration for me. They nurture inspiration in others, including myself. They're happy that I have it. You know, it's like sometimes with people where they inspire, each of you inspire each other. You're energized after the meeting, and other people, you're with them, and you're drained. So some people, quote, take your energy, and other people, if you would give you energy. But when you have those moments, usually it's a mutual inspiration kind of activity. I'm sure you've all had those kind of experiences. Those are one thing that I've learned is to show your brother.